The trouble all started with my mailbox. I was sipping coffee on the porch, watching my dog chase birds across the lawn when I saw her. Zelda Newcomb, HOA board member. Walking with that exaggerated, stiff-backed confidence that only HOA Karens possess. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, snapping photos like she was documenting a crime scene. She paused in front of my mailbox, just a regular black metal box on a treated cedar post, nothing fancy, and stared at it like it had insulted her family. I stood up. "Morning, Zelda." She didn't even look at me. "Daniel McRae, this mailbox is non-compliant with Ridgewood Estates HOA standards." I raised an eyebrow. "What part of it?" "It's not regulation height. The post is untreated, edges are too sharp. And the color. Our guidelines clearly state neutral tones only." "Zelda, it's black." "Black is not neutral," she said flatly, scribbling something on her clipboard. I blinked. "What? It's aggressive." She looked up at me like I was the idiot. "We'll be issuing a notice of violation and a fine. You'll have 15 days to correct it." Now, I'm not the kind of guy who looks for a fight. I'm a mechanic. I work long hours. I fix things, but I also know when someone's full of it. And Zelda, she was full of it. "Zelda, this mailbox has been here for 2 years. It's the same model the post office recommends. You're just now noticing it." She gave a tight smile. "I've been reviewing the neighborhood for compliance. You'll be receiving an official notice in the mail." I leaned against the porch rail. "You mean the mailbox you just said isn't acceptable?" Her lips thinned. She turned on her heel and stomped off without another word. That's when I knew this wasn't about the mailbox. It was about control. Zelda had been itching for a reason to dig into me ever since I voted against her ridiculous proposal last month to ban basketball hoops in driveways. She lost by 2 votes. Mine was one of them. And now, here we were. The next day, the violation notice showed up folded and taped to my front door. $50 fine due in 15 days. I called the number listed, straight to voicemail. Classic, so I did what any rational man would do. I called the local postmaster. A guy named Roy picked up. "Mailbox issue, huh? What's the model?" I gave him the make and measurements. He asked for a picture. I sent it. 3 hours later, Roy called back. "Yup, that mailbox is 100% compliant with federal regulations. The height's within range, the post's fine, and the color. Black is literally the most common." "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" I asked. He chuckled. "Already sent the email, and I CC'd the HOA address you gave me." I grinned. "You're a saint, Roy." Now I had proof, but with Zelda this wasn't going to end with an email. And I had a feeling the mailbox was just the beginning. 3 days passed without a word. I figured maybe the email from the postmaster had shut things down behind the scenes. I even started to think, stupidly, that Zelda had let it go. Then, on Saturday morning, I opened my front door to find a yellow tag dangling from the knob. "Second violation, escalation in progress." This time, the charge wasn't $50. It was $200. I didn't think people actually did double takes in real life until that moment. I grabbed the tag and stormed down the sidewalk to the cul-de-sac where Zelda's house sat like some smug, beige fortress. I didn't even knock. She was already outside, arranging a row of matching ceramic planters by her porch like she was preparing for a Better Homes and Gardens shoot. "You escalated this." I held up the tag. She didn't look up. "Non-compliance that goes uncorrected is grounds for increased penalties per Ridgewood Estates bylaws." Even after the postmaster confirmed everything was legal, she straightened, brushing soil from her gloves. "Federal standards don't override neighborhood aesthetics. This community has a look. That box doesn't match it." I lowered my voice. "You're playing a dangerous game, Zelda." She gave a thin laugh. "The only danger here is a homeowner who refuses to follow the rules he agreed to when he moved in." I turned and walked. Arguing with her was like reasoning with a vending machine that had already eaten your dollar, but something had changed. This wasn't just about power anymore. She was digging in, escalating, and that meant one thing: she was daring me to push back, so I did. I spent the rest of Saturday gathering paperwork. I pulled the original HOA agreement, dug through the bylaws, highlighted every section that referenced mailbox requirements. Nowhere did it mention post color, brand, or even model types, just a vague statement about maintaining uniform presentation. I printed the postmaster's email and added screenshots of similar mailboxes throughout the neighborhood, 11 of them, to be exact, 2 on my own street. All untouched by Zelda's wrath. I attached everything to an official dispute letter and walked it down to the HOA clubhouse, where I slid it under the locked office door. According to the bylaws, they had 5 business days to respond. They responded in 2. An envelope arrived Monday afternoon. Inside was a formal rejection, citing a newly discovered clarification found in an unsigned amendment to the mailbox policy. No date, no record of board approval, just a single line. Dark-colored mailboxes may be subject to review, That's not a regulation. That's a trapdoor. I drove straight to City Hall. The receptionist directed me to a woman named Jeanette in the municipal zoning office. I laid everything out: photos, the postmaster's statement, the unofficial amendment, the pattern of selective enforcement. Jeanette scanned the documents, then looked up. You know, HOAs can't enforce rules retroactively. If they pass a new guideline, it has to be voted on, recorded, and applied equally moving forward. Can they find someone based on a rule that doesn't technically exist? She leaned back. Not legally, but they count on homeowners being too tired, too busy, or too scared to challenge them. I exhaled. What if I'm not? Then I suggest you file a formal complaint with the city attorney's office. Bring everything you just showed me. She handed me a form. I filled it out right there, signed it, and submitted the entire packet. By the time I left, the office lights were flicking off behind me. That night, I installed a small motion-activated camera facing my front yard. Not because I expected anything, just insurance. By Thursday, the camera paid off. I got home late from the shop and checked the footage out of habit. At 2:18 a.m., a figure in a hooded sweatshirt crept across my lawn, paused at my mailbox, and examined the post. A flashlight beam flickered. Then scraping. I paused the video and zoomed in. They were using a screwdriver to pry at the screws near the base, trying to loosen it. Maybe even remove it. I called the non-emergency police line. Officer Bell showed up 20 minutes later. I explained everything, showed him the footage, handed him a copy of the mailbox report, the HOA notices, and the current complaint with the city attorney. He watched the clip twice, frowning. You recognize the person? Too dark to be sure, but I have a guess. He nodded. We'll log it as attempted vandalism and trespassing. If you get any more footage like this, let us know. And you might want to back up your files somewhere safe. I thanked him and walked him out. The next day, I received an email from the city attorney's office requesting a formal statement. They were opening an investigation into Ridgewood Estates HOA for selective enforcement, fraudulent fines, and possible tampering with personal property. That same afternoon, Zelda posted a notice on the community bulletin board outside the clubhouse. Emergency HOA meeting homeowner conduct and safety concerns. The timing was painfully convenient. I showed up 15 minutes early. The clubhouse was already half full. People I'd only ever waved to were whispering in little clusters. I caught snippets. Mailbox thing, spying. Someone tried to steal it. Zelda's losing it. She entered like a general surveying a battlefield. Clipboard, pearls. Eyes scanning the room like she was counting potential votes. When the meeting began, she wasted no time. We are here to address a growing issue in our neighborhood, she said, standing behind a folding table like it was a podium. One homeowner has chosen to challenge the standards we all agreed upon, and recent events suggest this defiance is escalating into hostility. She glanced at me. Allegations about the HOA board have been made to city officials. These accusations are unfounded and damaging to our community's reputation. I stood up. Are you saying the video of someone trying to steal my mailbox is damaging your reputation? A few heads turned. Zelda stiffened. That footage is unverified and I filed a police report. Officer Bell wrote it up personally. Want the case number? Murmurs rippled through the room. A woman in the back, Mrs. Alvarez, I think, raised her hand. Zelda, is it true you fined him twice for a mailbox that's allowed by federal law? Zelda's voice tightened. We have the right to enforce community standards. But it wasn't against the rules when he installed it, another voice said. I've lived here 10 years, said an older man near the windows. Mine's the same exact box, you never said a word. Zelda's jaw twitched. This isn't about the mailbox, it's about maintaining order. Sounds like it's about targeting people you don't like, I said. The room went silent. Then someone clapped, then another, and another. Zelda looked stunned. Her mouth opened, then closed. She gathered her papers and announced, "This meeting is adjourned." But it wasn't, because I wasn't done. The next morning, I dropped off a copy of the meeting recording publicly posted by another neighbor at the city attorney's office. Later that week, a letter arrived from the city. The HOA was being ordered to suspend all fines against me pending the outcome of the investigation. And that wasn't even the best part. 3 days after the emergency HOA meeting, I got a call from the city attorney's office. "Mr. McRae," said a woman named Nora, her voice crisp and focused. "We've reviewed your complaint and the supplemental material. Based on the video evidence, we're moving forward with a formal inquiry into Ridgewood Estates HOA's board practices." I leaned against the counter, heart thudding. "You mean like a full audit?" "More than that," she said. "We'll be issuing subpoenas for board meeting minutes, financial records, and any amendments to community policies that were not properly voted on. If we find evidence of malicious enforcement, fraudulent documentation, or misuse of funds, the board could face civil penalties or criminal charges, depending on what turns up." My grip tightened on the phone. "What about the mailbox issue? Given the pattern of selective enforcement and the attempted tampering captured on video, we're including it in the investigation. The police report supports your claim that someone associated with the HOA may have trespassed and attempted to damage personal property." I thanked her and hung up. By then, word had spread. Zelda still held her head high during her morning walks, but fewer neighbors waved. Some avoided her entirely. A few even crossed the street. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I got to work. I spent the weekend talking to neighbors, door to door, clipboard in hand. Not about the mailbox, that part was done. I asked about their own experiences with the HOA. Had they been fined unfairly? Had they received threats of liens or penalties for things that weren't against the rules? One couple, the Liangs, told me about a $300 fine they'd received for excessive ivy growth on their fence 3 months after they'd already torn it out. A retired schoolteacher down the block, Mr. Stokes, showed me a letter demanding he remove his solar panels because they disrupted the neighborhood's visual harmony. They'd been installed legally with a city permit. People were tired, not just of the fines, but of being bullied. I compiled the stories into a dossier and brought it down to City Hall, where Nora met me in person. We sat in a small, windowless room that smelled faintly of toner and coffee. "This is more than I expected," she said, flipping through the pages. "There's a clear pattern here. Selective interpretation of vague rules, no consistent enforcement, and in some cases," she tapped the panel photo, outright overreach. I hesitated. "Is there any way to remove a board like this?" She looked up. "If enough homeowners petition for it and a special vote is held, you can force a recall election. But you'll need at least 25% of the community to sign on. How many houses in Ridgewood? 312. I did the math. "So I need 78 signatures," she nodded. "And you'll want to act fast. If they catch wind of it, they may try to change procedures or delay the process." I thanked her again and left with a fresh sense of purpose. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't just reacting, I was moving. That night, I printed up the petition and laminated a copy of the HOA bylaws. I marked the section outlining the recall process in red and kept it in my truck, along with a stack of clipboards and pens. Over the next few days, I hit every street in Ridgewood Estates. I knocked, I listened. I wrote down names. Most people didn't need much convincing. Some said they'd been waiting for someone to start something. Others weren't even aware they had power to challenge the board. By Thursday, I had 92 signatures. I dropped the petition off at the HOA's drop box, then followed up with a certified letter to the board's official mailing address, documenting the demand for a recall election. That same evening, something happened that changed everything. I was working late in the garage when I heard rapid footsteps outside, then the sound of something hitting the front window. I ran out onto the porch. A figure in dark clothes was sprinting down the sidewalk. I didn't chase them. I went straight to the camera feed. It was the same person from the mailbox incident. This time, they'd thrown a rock wrapped in paper. I picked it up, unwrapped it, and read the note. "You don't know what you're starting." I called the police again, handed over the footage, and filed a report. Officer Bell returned, this time with a second officer. They took the threat seriously. "We're escalating this to the detective unit," he said. "This isn't just a civil matter anymore. You're being targeted." He advised me to keep the cameras running and to avoid confronting anyone directly. The next day, something even bigger broke. A journalist from the local paper, the Westfield Beacon, reached out. She'd heard whispers about a city investigation into Ridgewood Estates and wanted to know more. I agreed to meet her at the cafe just outside the neighborhood. Her name was Callie. She was sharp-eyed, fast-talking, and carried a battered leather notebook like it was attached to her hand. When I laid out the details, the fines, the false amendment, the videos, the city's involvement, she listened, scribbled, and asked for copies of everything. "This could be bigger than just one HOA," she said. "There's a network of management companies that coach boards on how to write intentionally vague bylaws. They profit by pushing fines, then collecting fees on enforcement." I blinked. "You're saying this is a business model?" She nodded. "It's quiet, but it's real. If your board's involved with one of those companies, or if they've been altering documents without owner approval, that's fraud. And if money's moving around, that's a different kind of fire." She asked for permission to publish a story. I gave it. The article dropped 2 days later. The headline read, "Power, Fines, and Fear Inside Ridgewood's HOA Nightmare." It included quotes from residents, excerpts from the city complaint, and stills from the security footage. It also named Zelda as the acting board secretary and detailed her role in issuing disputed fines. Within 24 hours, the HOA's inbox was flooded. Residents demanded answers. The board's official website went offline, and then came the real hammer blow. The police executed a search warrant on the HOA's rented storage unit. Turns out, the board had been keeping physical records, their old meeting notes, financial statements, and internal emails printed and filed. What they didn't expect was that one of those emails, dated 6 months earlier, outlined a plan to quietly revise the bylaws to ensure maximum fine flexibility. Worse still, the board had been issuing contracts to a private enforcement firm owned by the husband of one of the board members. Thousands of dollars had changed hands. None of it had been disclosed to the homeowners. The city attorney's office filed charges. Zelda and 2 other board members were arrested for fraud, conspiracy to falsify public documents, and misuse of community funds. The recall vote was no longer necessary. In the weeks that followed, a temporary oversight committee was appointed by the city to manage Ridgewood Estates until a new board could be elected. Residents volunteered in shifts. People who had never spoken before started organizing potlucks, lawn cleanups, and even a neighborhood watch, the mailbox still standing, never touched again. But now it had something new. A small bronze plaque at its base. It read, "Compliance verified, resistance required." 2 weeks after the arrests, Ridgewood Estates was quieter but not calm. The kind of quiet that settles over a place when people are waiting, unsure whether they're witnessing the end of something awful or the beginning of something worse. I wasn't waiting. I was digging. The city's temporary oversight committee had set up a folding table just inside the clubhouse with a handwritten sign taped to the wall behind it. Records Review and Transition Coordination. I'd stopped by once to drop off a neighbor's statement. Now I was there nearly every other day, volunteering to help sort the paper trail left behind by the old regime. There were boxes, dozens of them, stacked in the back room, some labeled, most not. I helped catalog everything: past board meeting minutes, contractor invoices, homeowner complaints that had been lost, and several envelopes of receipts stuffed with cash payments. That last part made the city auditor's eyes light up, but it was what I found inside a blue binder marked 2021 MISC. Correspondence that turned everything upside down again. Tucked between two faded newsletters was a typed letter with the HOA's letterhead and a signature that didn't belong to Zelda or any of the 3 arrested board members. The name was Benjamin L. Curran, someone I didn't recognize. In the letter, Curran was requesting a redline revision to Ridgewood's architectural guidelines. He included suggestions for stricter mailbox standards, ornamental restrictions on landscaping, and a clause that would enable the HOA to fine without board votes under certain urgent aesthetic conditions. The letter wasn't addressed to the board. It was addressed to a man named Ellis Rayner, owner of a company called Rayner Community Management, LLC. I took a photo of the letter and brought it straight to Nora at the city attorney's office. She read it twice, then looked up. Rayner's name already came up in our early research, she said. He's been behind a string of HOA consolidations across the county. He sets up shell companies, installs friendly board members, then shifts management contracts to his firm. That's how he turns neighborhoods into private piggy banks. You think Ridgewood was one of them? She nodded slowly. Looks like it. This letter connects the dots. It shows outside influence on board policy without a vote or homeowner input. That's illegal under state HOA code, and if money changed hands in exchange for policy changes, that's bribery. I asked what came next. We'll subpoena Rayner's company records, she said. If there's evidence he paid or received money from members of the Ridgewood board, we'll pursue charges. Within days, the city filed a motion in district court requesting a full audit of Rayner Community Management. The judge approved it. A forensic accounting team was dispatched. The results came back fast. Over the past 3 years, Ridgewood's HOA had funneled over $80,000 in consulting fees to a firm called Greenpoint Advisory, which was registered to a P.O. box in another county. Greenpoint, it turned out, had one employee, Ellis Rayner. The money had gone out in monthly increments, each payment signed off by the board's treasurer. City officials held a press conference. Rayner was arrested 2 days later for conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, and bribery of public officials. That should have been the end of it. But something still didn't sit right with me. The mailbox, my mailbox, was the first violation issued under the revised guidelines that Curran had drafted and Rayner had pushed. Why start with me? Why not a bigger target? Something more visible? I went back through the footage I'd saved from the security camera. I reviewed the timestamps, the figure in the hoodie, the rock through the window. I slowed every frame looking for patterns. That's when I noticed something. The figure wasn't always alone. 3 nights before the rock incident, at 2:33 in the morning, 2 people had walked up my driveway. One held a flashlight, the other carried what looked like a folder. They didn't touch the mailbox. They crouched near my garage and seemed to be talking. One pointed at the window. The camera's angle didn't catch their faces, but I saw a flash of a badge clipped to the second person's belt. I brought the footage to Officer Bell. He watched silently, then leaned back. "That's not one of ours," he said. "We don't carry badges like that. And we don't patrol in pairs after midnight without logging it." "Could it be private security?" he frowned. "Not unless they're impersonating law enforcement. That badge looks official." I asked if he could run the image through their database. He said he'd try. 3 days later, Bell called me back. "You were right to be suspicious," he said. "The person with the badge, his name is Curran Benjamin Curran, former code enforcement officer, fired last year for misconduct. He was caught conducting unauthorized inspections for HOAs without city approval. That sent a chill down my spine. He's not supposed to be anywhere near enforcement," Bell continued. "But based on this footage, looks like he was still active off the books." Bell filed a report and forwarded the evidence to the DA's office. Curran was arrested the following week on charges of impersonating a public officer and unlawful entry. The final thread had been pulled. In the aftermath, Ridgewood Estates underwent a complete transformation. The Oversight Committee dissolved after a fair election brought in a new board, one with actual transparency. The new president, a retired firefighter named Darren West, held open meetings on the clubhouse lawn. He posted agendas in advance, streamed sessions online, and abolished the private enforcement contracts. Fines could no longer be issued without a majority vote from the board and only for violations clearly outlined in the original governing documents. One of the first actions they took was to repeal all fines issued under Zelda's tenure and refund any paid amounts. They also created a homeowner advocacy panel, a group of volunteers who would advise residents on their rights and help mediate disputes before they escalated. I was asked to join. I accepted. It felt surreal, walking into the same clubhouse where I'd once been accused of making the neighborhood aggressive because of a black mailbox. Now, I sat at a folding table helping neighbors navigate the same system that had once steamrolled them. One evening, as I was gathering up paperwork after a session, Darren walked over. "You know," he said, "if you hadn't stood your ground, none of this would have come out. Rayner, the fake badge guy, the whole scheme, they were counting on silence." I shrugged. "I just wanted to be left alone," he smiled. "That's usually how the best fights start." Outside, the neighborhood looked the same trimmed hedges, same driveways, same rows of tidy homes, but something had changed. People waved now, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Kids played basketball in driveways that used to be complaint magnets. Gardeners planted what they liked, not what was permitted, and me. I left the mailbox exactly as it was. It stood at the edge of the curb, a little worn now, sun-faded in places, but it had earned that. On the back, just beneath the box's flap, I added a small brass tag. It read, "Federal Standard, Community Proven,